Hey, Alex, welcome back. How's it going over in your neck of the woods?
Doing well, doing well. Excited for another episode.
Right on, man. Quick question for you.
hmm
What if I told you that we could beat the S&P 500 with 500 horsepower?
Color me intrigued.
Right on. Well, welcome to episode 10 of the Money Shift podcast. I'm Josh with Revhard Motors,
And I'm Alexander.
and today we're going to be going over JDMs as an investment vehicle, no pun intended.
Or very much intended. Yeah, this is going to be fun. I mean, this is something that we're both really interested in and has been sort of at the core of what we're doing at Driven Labo.
Yes.
And we pulled together some good stats today that I think will really paint the picture of what it is that we're building.
Yeah, so outside of the passion and enthusiasm we have for these cars, one of the key components to me going down the initial venture of starting the dealership and then obviously getting involved in the Driven Labo project, Driven Vehicles, is the fact that the cars are appreciating assets. In a standard dealership world, you have 10 Kias on the lot, anything can happen. We had a trade of a Ford Bronco, and then from the buy bid to the time it got to us, it lost 10 grand in value. And the longer the cars sit here in my inventory, the more they go up. I had a R33 back in the day that didn't sell for a while, had big turbo, very specific interest. And the month that it sat here, it actually gained 6 grand in value. And I always kind
In
of
1 month.
it was about 2, 3 months. It took a little
Still,
longer to
not
sell
bad.
them. Yeah, we wanted it to go within a month. That would have been ideal, but it took about 3 months to sell that one. It had a big, huge Borg Werner turbo on it, and so, it was for the right buyer. And in that time that it sat here, it ended up working out well for us because it kind of performed over time a little better. And I always joke with my friends and family, like, why do you have an R32? Why do you have these cars? And well, I just say my savings account has 500 horsepower and I get to enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the methodology behind what we're doing. So, in addition to the fun and exciting events that we're going to and, offering tokenized cars, there's an adage in the world that, you try to match the or beat the S&P 500, right? It's kind of the standard metric. All the investor guys typically talk about 10 to 12% returns over time. Throw a couple thousand in when you're 20 and watch it go to millions over time. And we're kind of seeing that in the JDM car market. And so we're going to go over today some notable examples, some of the most expensive examples, some of the cars that we just anticipate won't lose value over time and can act as a hedge, right? And I guess that's kind of the strategy in the investment world is you find some things that are runners and some things that are going to appreciate over time, and other things you invest in wisely because they're going to be a stable value over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I think this topic kind of came to mind from a recent meeting we had with a potential investor where we were asked, when the market, as all markets do, go through cycles, we're looking at putting together effectively an investment platform utilizing JDM vehicles. How do they perform in bear markets? And the reality is when we're looking at the echelon of vehicles that we're going to bring into our collection, these are
Mm-hmm.
not like your average let's say um, you know like
Run of the mill.
yeah, I'm thinking of something that's like pretty run of the mill, like let's call it like I mean, even like an average S15. It's a sweet car, but it's not like it doesn't demand super high prices. Or think of like I don't know, a WRX, right? They're a dime a dozen. We're talking about cars that are extremely rare, that have either a racing pedigree or are limited editions and have a true uh, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like a,
Pedigree.
yeah,
Uh,
not only that, but also like a proven number. Like there's only 15 of these that exist in the world. And when you're talking about cars like this, the even in a bear market, the prices don't really slump all that much, if anything. In fact, you have a pretty good story about what was it, a Z-Tune, Nismo GTR R34 Z-Tune, I believe it was, that in the same time that your base model R34 went down by maybe, I don't know, $20,000, this one went up by $100,000.
Yeah, so essentially what's happened is, when I first got into this game in the actual import space, there was always a new model year coming out. So when I first started, the 89, 90s were legal, 91s, 92s. And what happened was the appreciation of these vehicles would jump 20 to 30% just on the availability and demand of them.
Yeah, kind of like a Coinbase listing. It's like it jumps up and then it starts to settle back down before it finds its new.
Correct. So, like, for example, one that comes to mind was I had the opportunity to buy a handful of Evo 4s before they became legal for $8,000. And once they finally hit the market, they were selling in the mid 20s. And, there are some people that have taken advantage of buying some of these. Most recently, we had a Toyota Hilux pickup truck that came in. And it's a 99 model. The gentleman bought it about 2 years ago and has been storing it for two reasons. Obviously, the price appreciation. And then with trucks specifically, there's an extra tax for open beds. But, he was able to save quite a bit of money by purchasing a car 2 years earlier. And he's beaten the S&P 500 with his vehicle and
that's
some
just
of these
a
meme coins.
Pickup truck.
Yeah, and that's just a pickup truck.
Yeah.
And so when I first started, the average R32 Skyline was about 2025 landed. And what was unique about that time is the difference between like a N1 car or a V-spec car and a base model car were about $5,000-6,000 spread. And further on down the line here in more collector territory, we're starting to see the base R32 GTR level out around that 35 to 45 range. Excellent examples in that 55 to 65 range. And then the N1 example most recently went for like $80,000 and up.
Mm-hmm.
And so the spread is becoming more enormous. And so the pedigree of cars that we're talking about are really starting to catch fire as far as that goes. 3 years back, we had sold a V-Spec 2 NER. And I think I had the stats on here. It wasn't very many made of the V-Spec 2 NER. It's only the second most rare Skyline behind the Z-Tune. 718 units made. And, we were able to pick that up below 500,000. And now it's estimated to be in that 800 range. And so it would take you years to make that kind of spread in the S&P 500. For example. And even on the lower level, Alex, I'm seeing, appreciation over the last 10 years. For example, even the 300ZX Z32, the wedge car, the twin turbo that everyone likes, 2+2, right?
Yeah.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen a 44% increase in the value of that vehicle. Mm-hmm. The Toyota Skyline, the Mark IV, everyone's favorite Supra, has seen 100%.
Toyota Skyline?
Toyota Supra, the Mark IV, everyone's favorite Supra. We've seen those appreciate 100%. When those first became legal, the left-hand drive was far more coveted, mostly because the way the turbo piping and the cooling route around the steering rack, being on the other side, it's a less desirable car. So when I first started, you could get a Mark IV Supra, the RZ turbo model, for $30,000, and even those are going $60,000 now. So that's 100% increase if you're talking just sheer percentages, right? And these are just regular cars.
Yeah, but when you start thinking about some of the higher tier, like super rare cars, these are the ones that we're looking at bringing into our long-term collection and tokenizing for fractional ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Things like an M-Spec NER. Let's hear the prices on some of these that we're looking at bringing in.
Yeah, so basically the Skyline models, the hype before legal, we're seeing base model of GTRs in that 150, 160, 180 range. And they've kind of calmed down quite a bit. You can find a nice base model R34 GTR in the $100,000 range, 90 to 115, I would say. And then above that, you have the V-Spec models. V-Spec models are kind of plateauing and holding out around that 150, 180 range. And then from there, you have the M Specner, which is about 285 of those made, and those are starting to creep up in the 500 to a million range. And then most notably, like there's a rare color called the Millennium Jade, right? It's kind of like this cool champagne green type color. And there wasn't just very many of them made. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard the jokes about the Corvette guys. This was made on the third Sunday. It's the only red one made on a Sunday kind of thing. But in these cars, there genuinely only is a handful left. And so we're starting to see mega appreciation. And in fact, on the top tier level is the Z-Tune, or as the Australians call it, the Z-Tune R34. There's only 19 of these cars made. At the time, Nissan wanted to preserve its legacy in the Nismo factory, took 19 examples and kind of gave them a complete overhaul. We're talking race technology, carbon reinforcement. They did a 2.8 liter stroker motor in this, and they built it not for mega numbers, but to just be super enduring under load. They have a carbon drive shaft, a cool rear carbon diffuser. Most notably, everyone knows the Z-Tune for like the fenders that kind of poke out under the mirrors for the ducts, the Z-Tune bumper and the hood with the grills in it, right? And so these cars, even back then when available, were $200,000 when the average GTR was only going for like 50 or 60. And now we're seeing those same cars go in the 1.5 to even $5 million range. A lot of them were in like a silver type color. And I was just, looking at a video this guy did in Australia where there's a midnight purple one that they redid. Super rare to have it in the midnight purple. That car is probably worth $5 million at this time. And I don't see these going down. There's only 19 of them. And even at the time, the only way to get one was to be a donor or super someone special to Nissan. So like there's real, and I guess I keep using the word pedigree, and there might be a better word for it, like you were saying, Alex, but these are the type of cars that the demand is not going to ever go down on. No one's ever going to not want one of these. And there's not very many left, and it's really hard to get. So there's a lot of price stabilization with a car of that caliber. Now, will we ever have a Z-Tune in our collection, Alex? I'm not sure. It's going to be a tough feat, but we're going to shoot for it. And then, I think even on a different scale, notably like a Group A R32, something that was raced with heritage and lineage, and it's actually, documented and well known. We're seeing those cars in the $300,000 to $500,000 range as well. And so outside of just the typical cars seeing a 30-40% increase in cars in price, we're seeing these really rare diamond gem cars. And I think the first car to hit $1 million as a JDM was the Toyota 2000 GT. I don't know if you know what one of those looks like. That one hit $1 million. Some of the most expensive cars out there to date right now would be the 2000 GT, the Z-Tune, one of the R31 GTS-Rs is going over 300,000. There's R33, the R1 model that's really rare. And then, you said something about Subarus. Even Subaru has its little hidden gem. Have you ever heard of a 22B, Alex?
Heard of it. Honestly, don't know much about it.
Yeah, it was one of their race history program cars. The 22B Subaru is going average of $300,000 to $500,000 also, and that's just for the Subaru. So there's a lot of cars out there. So, as the S&P dips or as these other cars kind of plateau in value, there really is some staying power and some, it's really true that you can beat the S&P and hedge your money with JDM vehicles, and that's one of the large reasons why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see with these, they could even act as like a hedge in a bear market. So it's like, if we're talking to crypto folks, at the top of the market when people are looking at getting out, yeah, they could go into USD, sell all their Bitcoin or what have you into fiat. But, it may even be a play for some people to think about selling their taking their profits at the height of the market before we go into the next bear, and getting shares in something like a special edition GTR or a NSX or something like that, which will maintain its value at the very least, if not continue to grow.
Not only that, but like, some cars have their own cycles, right? I've heard a lot of Porsche buyers talk about buying the dip, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, one of the hot cars in the market is and forgive me if I say this wrong, but the 360 Modena. So the 360 itself is a hot car, and we just happen to have one. But even when that market dips, there's not very many owned by Paul Walker.
You mean there's only one owned by Paul Walker, and we own it, or I should say it was owned by him until
right. So if you own a share in the Ferrari as the market cycle dips, there's some staying power for that, whereas the average car is going to go down. And I think, some notable examples of expensive cars that have just kind of tanked in value is like the Lamborghini Urus, right? It's kind of a joke that if you buy a Cadillac, you're going to lose 10 to 15% as soon as you drive it off the lot, and they kind of just go. BMW is notorious for just at the end of their life dropping like a rock, right? Could you imagine spending $250,000 on a Urus and then a year later it's worth $125,000? Like, that's somebody's condo in a small city. Like, it's crazy. And on the same token, we had a customer who bought a M-Spec NER or a V-Spec 2 NER, and over that same time, he's seen the equivalent in appreciation. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do, is offer that. So that's what the tokenization of vehicles is really about, is the exposure for the quick gains. Like, let's just say we have an Evo 7 that we're going to bring into our S-type collection and put the coolest stuff on it. If we were to buy an Evo 7 now, when that car becomes legal, there's already a built-in 20%, and then we sprinkle the driven style on top of it. There's going to be a significant portion to shed around, kind of like getting into a meme coin early. Meanwhile, we can also give you a hedge in long-term exposure to things like the Ferrari or a rare N1 R32 and things of this nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That M-Spec, you said that appreciated. What was what were the numbers on that? How, over what time period did it increase by how much?
It was actually the V-Spec 2 NER, which we were trying to get on the show and display, but the list was kind of modified. But the V-Spec 2 NER, and again, this is, purchased from a client, so I don't know if they want me to spread their business like that. But let's just say it was well under $500,000. And then in 2.5 years, the car is now seeing values in the $500,000 to $800,000 range.
Okay.
And so we're looking, almost 100% increase on that one over just 2 years. And then, as time goes by and that Z-Tune car hits 5-6 million, it's altogether possible that V-Spec 2 NER will hit that $1 million price point.
Oh, yeah.
And so, that's a significant capital increase on that money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, one of the other things that people look at when they're investing in, let's say, in certain stocks, you'll get the price appreciation, but you'll also get dividends from, the profits and from the company. And that's something that we're factoring in here as well. It's not just that but you also have a chance to work with your community of fellow co-owners to put together plans to monetize that car. So, some of the things that come to mind, I've used this example numerous times, is, if we're putting together relationships with movie studios, we could rent it out, these, super high-end rare cars to be featured in a movie. They're going to pay a pretty penny for that. And then that profit will then be distributed amongst the shareholders of the car. Or, we'll be putting together a ton of content around every car in our collection. So, that's going to generate YouTube AdSense revenue. It's going to bring in sponsors. We could have the cars be sponsored and use it for marketing for other companies. There's a variety of ways to monetize these cars once they're in the collection that then will pay dividends to the shareholders. And the cool part about that is, with the help of Web3 blockchain technology, our co-owners could propose what they want to do to generate revenue, and all of the other shareholders could vote on whether or not they want to, to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and so like when we're getting popularity with the vehicle, with the content, for example, it also opens up to things like merch lines,
Yep.
And this could be as simple as a t-shirt or a hoodie of the vehicle, but all the way up to, some really nice quality items. We've been discussing a line of custom watches for some of these cars. I think there's some people who would really like a tasteful V-Spec 2 Nerd watch. Kind of the
Yep.
dial is like a gauge bezel or something similar like that. And so, yeah, there's some very unique opportunities. And then also within that, once you're in that community, the exit strategy is also voted on too. So
Yes.
let's just say we did get a V-Spec 2 Nerd in the collection and we bought it for, let's just say, for crazy intents and purposes here, this is not real, like $150,000, and the car went to $1 million. Well, that's kind of going to be the peak for a while, right? And so everyone says, well, we have the opportunity. Let's go put that thing at Pebble Beach and let it rip. And so that's the other opportunity too. It's like, we're not held captive to this. We're all in this together. Again, we do it all for the community. And so in these little micro communities of micro economies of these cars, there is price appreciation, there is price stability, but there's also additional revenue streams that we generated by being a token holder. And then as a holder of the Buster token, which is like the governance token outside of the car's physical tokens, there's voting rights on what to do with this kind of stuff too in different events. And then ultimately, Alex, and as you know, this is your dream is, and people here in Colorado will be familiar with this, there's a place called the Vehicle Vault. It's a huge warehouse style building, has an awesome museum of a car collection. It kind of has the who's who of regular car collecting, from a Model T, the Mercedes Gullwing. And then above that, it has a mezzanine. I've seen things from wedding parties. I've seen corporate events there. Even a supercar guy's funeral was held there. And so, it's outside of the car collection, of which the car that you own will be part of the collection. There's dividends on the monetization of that as well. So as we generate revenue from the museum ticket sales, for example, those will then be spread amongst whoever owns part of the cars also. So there's addition to the microeconomy of the car itself, there's additional revenue models even outside of that everyone can take a part of.
Yeah. I think there's really no limit to the things that we can do with these cars to find new and creative ways to monetize them. And some of them are tried and true, like you said, the museum, which is really our ultimate goal, is to put together this amazing like tourist destination for car lovers, where people can come in and see this huge community owned collection of some of the rarest JDM and other historically significant collector cars. But yeah, I mean, there's content, there's merchandise, whatever we can come up with. Even turning the cars themselves into like playable in-game assets that could be sold as like let's say NFTs for Torque Drift 2, where now people can go on the platform and buy a digital version of this real life car, and that creates another revenue stream.
Yeah, for example, and I'll use this as kind of a scenario, is our project is built on base. Base is the blue in color. We want to get an R34 that is Bayside blue. We can call it Bayside blue. Mm-hmm. Perhaps one day Coinbase helps us at the advertising. So now we have a coin-based blue R32.
Yeah.
Right? And then basically the way NFTs work is you sell a batch of however many that are available, and then it's called minting out. You mint those, and then there's only a finite number that ever gets sold, and there will be another dividend, I guess, for lack of a better term, a revenue stream from selling those vehicles digitally, which hasn't existed before either. And in addition to that, in like what we call the IRL, in real life, there's user experiences, right? And so as a pool together, the owners might decide, let's put 500 miles on the car this year. And then we do a track day and we can do laps and ride-alongs. And so physically get to enjoy the car that you own. is also another piece of that puzzle. So it's all about community, member experience, creative revenue opportunities, and utilizing the blockchain to its fullest capacity to open up opportunities that just were not available a while ago. And what I'll put that in a frame of reference is I grew up playing Gran Turismo. I don't know about you, Alex.
Oh yeah.
Need for Speed, that kind of thing, right? In order to get the cool cars, you had to put in work, buddy. You had to do all the challenges, you had to do the driving tests, you had to do tons of races. In order to get some of those upper echelon cars, you're looking at some serious time invested in these games just to see a digital return with no actual intangible value.
Mm-hmm.
And so in our scenario, what we're cognizant of is for all the time and effort invested into the platform, there is something to say for that. And so like if we hold sim competitions, for example, or our cars are in certain races, we can even sponsor the cars digitally as those go out too. And so it's open and endless. But to kind of tie it all back together, the cars that we're investing in and the opportunities that we're giving are not just for the passion element of it, which is core driven. That's what we're about, is the passion of it. That's what makes us move forward each day. But the solid business mind behind it, the practicality of actually the potential of beating the S&P 500 with 500 horsepower is a reality on several cases. And some of the most unique cars that are anticipated to never go down in value are some things you would never think of. Right, obviously the Toyota 2000 GT is going to be a staple. The Z-Tune R34 is going to be a staple, but a couple other cars that people wouldn't necessarily suspect are like the Spirit R, RX-7. Everyone has a soft spot for the FD. The Spirit R is the top-notch echelon of the FD world, and something that hasn't had a crazy veal side get, even though we all love those. The Clean Classic and Original is going to hold its value. Another unique vehicle that is probably never going to go down in value is the Honda S2000. Most people wouldn't think of that. And so if there's a rare Honda S2000 called the Club Race Spec. I don't know if you've heard of those, Alex, but there's only a few of those made, and they're pretty desirable. So, just having these cars in our collection is going to present a lot of opportunities for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think this really hits the sweet spot between, that slow, steady potential growth of investing in stocks in the S&P and what have you, and also the more, I guess, risky investments that a lot of people are doing right now in the crypto world of meme coins and what have you, that don't really have any true utility.
Correct.
And we're in this center spot where we're using the technology that powers the most speculative shit out there, but it's backed by a real world asset that can really generate revenue and will outperform in most cases, the stock market. So, I feel like this is really something that once people wrap their heads around, should be a no-brainer, hopefully.
And something that we're both familiar with, Alex, and the general public is yet to be made aware of in full is something called AMM, or automatic market makers, right? And so like when you trade on the Forex, which is how people trade currencies from different countries, there's pairs established. This is worth this, that's worth that. And so with the blockchain technology, we're able to create a pairing. So as the car has an appraised value of, let's just say the Z-Tune in a crazy case is worth $2 million appraised, now we have a mirrored market that's paired to that allows for tolerances of fluctuations.
Yeah.
So it's not like buying unicorn fart dust and it can just plummet to zero if someone sells it all.
Yeah.
There's a floor where there's a mechanism built in to acquire the asset to keep the value at a stable floor. If you're on pump.fun and you put a bunch of money into some crazy coin, there's always the possibility of someone selling out from under you. So, and I think that's what a lot of people still understand digital currency to be. Mm-hmm. But as we move more forward and we build these stable platforms, people will see that, not only can you take advantage of some of these quick upside opportunities, but the stability behind it is actually a built-in mechanism. And so I'll use another example is Kickstarter. Everyone's heard of Kickstarter, right? And Kickstarter, you might put a project out, everyone donates and supports you, and And in return, you get, some stickers or maybe the first t-shirt or gizmo they made. Or if you're a recording artist, they'll come to your house and play a song or whatever. This is kind of that same mentality, like even with our S-type cars is, let's get that Evo 7 we talked about earlier and do a full build on the motor. A lot of my customers who buy a car and redo the whole car, they're spending 30, 40, 20, 30, 40 grand on that process. And it's a fun and exciting process, but there's a lot of headaches to it. And, imagine being able to go along that journey and have the say in that process and see that reward of doing it without the actual liability and just all the upside. And that's kind of what we're excited about too, is using this technology as a stable platform to give people opportunity versus just the quick speculations that are most popular today.
Yeah. And just for those in the audience that aren't too familiar with our various business models for these cars, I want to just quickly give a definition. So we have our R spec, which these are the super rare cars like the Z-Tunes, like we're talking about, that will be held in a long-term collection in a museum and, be basically preserved to maximize their price appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Type S cars, which are going to be cars that are less rare but still highly desirable. The Evos, the S15s, things like that, which we can bring in, find a really solid platform to build off of, effectively refurbish it to the state of basically a brand new car, and then put our treatment on it, that make it driven tuned. So, it's got, better performance, better handling. Yeah. Do some cool retro mod type things to it to make it effectively a brand new car. And, you look at other companies that do these sorts of things, I'm thinking like Singer does with Porsche. You can pick up, a late model air-cooled Porsche for, $50,000. It's not a cheap car, but it also is going to have all of the problems of a 40, 50-year-old car, right? And then what Singer does is they take it, they completely rebuild it from, the frame up, basically, make it a better performing car and more beautiful than it's ever been before with, modern technology. And those things go for $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So people will pay a premium for a brand new special edition version of something. And especially now, and this touches on the next thing I wanted to talk about, is, the JDM cars of the 90s are the classic cars of the Gen X and millennial generations. Our generation isn't interested in hot rods or, even to a degree, muscle cars. Like, yeah, they're cool, but those aren't the cars that we grew up, like dreaming about driving one day when we were playing Gran Turismo or watching Fast and Furious or Initial D, right? We're dreaming about, about these Japanese sports cars of the golden era of JDM. And those are going to be the cars that our generation wants and will pay a pretty penny for. And, if you look at the way just the generations progress, we're about, in the next 10 years, we're about to see a huge transfer of wealth from the boomer generation down to our generation as they, retire and sounds morbid to say it, but, start to die off. And we're going to have more money at our disposal to go out and purchase our dream cars. And when you look at some of these cars that there's, on the low end, 15 of them in existence, or maybe, something that there's only like 2,000 of them. Or good example would be the car that I'm building is a 97 Nissan 240 SX. So in 97 and 98, they only made 3,500 or thereabouts in the US, 3,500 per year. So call it 7,000. Most of them have been wrecked, beat to shit.
They're all beat to shit, drifting.
Turned to race cars, or just rusted out, piles of junk. And so to find one that's still in good condition, like my car, once it's done, I could probably easily sell it for, $40,000. And
which is like 4 times the original MSRP.
yeah, and even if you look on Kelley Blue Book, my car should only be worth about like $6,000,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't take into account the enthusiast market that will pay that premium for it. So then you start to look at the fact that our generation is going to have a lot more wealth, a lot more capital to play with in the next decade. you know I could see a lot of these cars just continuing to grow in value to pretty ridiculous uh, valuations.
And we're already starting to see that. So I was around here in 2020 when it was the last, I guess, crazy bull run, and I was just shocked at how many people had made money in both the stock markets and in their coins that wanted to purchase a vehicle. And I think we're entering in that same territory now. And so the supply of these cars is low. And as the opportunity to buy for these individuals increases, the demand is going to increase, which is going to create a market, as you said, that's going to be in the price appreciation territory. And, I ultimately see a day when a clean S chassis hits $50,000 because there's none left. I see in the rare example of the kind of the king of the S chassis, there's one called the 270R,
Mm-hmm.
and those are really rare. We're starting to see those in the six figures already,
Oh yeah.
and there's really not much different in that car than yours, except for the rarity of the spec and the package. And to further exemplify what you said about Singer, we're already seeing that in our space with like the Nissan Amori factory, right? They make one called the Club Race spec, where they take the car down to bare nuts, put it on the rotisserie and build it all back up as whole. And when you buy a Club Race spec, it comes with its own briefcase. Like it's a pretty special deal. And I think that's going to be the trend of the market going forward. We have some restore shops here in town where they kind of known for doing the same thing. They do like the older cars like Austin Healey's and all the old German stuff and all the old muscle cars. But you're absolutely 100% right. This is why I got into this. I remember hanging around the muscle car guys and no replacement for displacement, right?
Yeah, it's called a turbo.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can replace it, but it was just like with Honda's, the horsepower per liter, the fascination with the Japanese culture. It was so much more, and it's such a deep connection with these vehicles that I think a lot of us have, and as a lot more of us have the opportunity to purchase, I think that'll steady increase. And I think that, the initial wave has kind of had its cycle as well. Like in 2018, 19, 20, we were kind of on an upside. Then when everyone got locked up in COVID, everyone saw this content online, like the peak feverishness for just a JDM car, even on the younger crowd who isn't necessarily our generation, kind of topped out. And then it kind of declined, and we're morphing into that wave of people who are just true enthusiasts, and they're going to be seeking these rare one-off vehicles.
Yep.
And the unique, and what I see is the trend, and I've said this before, is the clean, the classic, and the original. When I first started, everyone wanted to wide body everything and just throw the craziest shit they could on the car. But the car that's worth money now is the one that has never been touched.
Yeah.
If you can find an Evo 5 that's never had a mod on it with no rust, you're looking 50, 60 grand. We just sold one called the TME. It's a Tommy Mackinnon edition. That guy got it 2 years ago, saved some money. Even back then, that car was 40, 50 grand. Now they're looking like 60, 80 grand, 100 grand for some of these Evos that have never been touched that are Tommy Mackinnon. So, yes, we've hit that initial wave. We're kind of going into the next one, and I think we're well positioned to take advantage of that wealth transfer and price stability because things have kind of hashed themselves out now. We know where we're going. There's some more data to back it up, and we've seen the plateauing and leveling off of prices. I had a customer about 3 months ago buy an R34 because he saw the price level at the bottom. And so now we're ready to hit that trajectory back up.
Yeah. I'll even speculate a little further out than what I did about Gen X and millennials. My daughter's 17, and she's been wanting an S13 for the past, I don't know, 5 years. That was her dream car, and she saved up enough money to get one. And looking at all of our friends and a lot of, the younger kids that are, Gen Z, they're even looking at JDM cars of the 90s as the most desirable cars. Since around 2000 and after, the cars have sort of lost the same personality or passion or you know uniqueness that they once had. And I could even see the demand for these continue to grow as Gen Z becomes hits their 30s and 40s and has money to play with. So I don't see it slowing down even after our generation is kicking off this mortal coil, so to speak.
Yes, I will agree with that on the clean classic and the original.
Hmm.
I think the random Gen Zer that's just wanting to get a right-hand drive and wants to drive a Toyota Crown or some weird one-off car that they don't know about is probably going to go down. But just like we see the famous Eleanor GT500 Mustang hold its value for life,
Hmm.
I think the JDM cars will become that new equivalent. I 100% agree with that analysis.
Yeah.
And what's going to be interesting, and this is kind of a side divergence, but I'm seeing some of these really young kids get into the Hyundais and tuning it, and I'm thinking these Gen Z kids are going to be doing K-tune cars, which is just mind-boggling to think about. Because from our
Yeah.
generation, a Hyundai Sonata was nothing to glorify. But yeah, we just see these trends continuing, and with the right caliber of cars, it's always going to be a consistent basis. And even just outside of cars too, we're seeing it in some of the other vehicles, like that Toyota Hilux, right? I know that,
Hmm.
what's his name, Whistling Diesel or whatever his name is, he's put those through the test. There's a demand for those. I'm even getting requests for JDM camper vans, little K-truck camper vans. And
Hmm.
so I think we are still a ways off from peak, and I think we still have a lot of stability to go. And I think we're right at that precipice where the blockchain technology can support something like this. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. And I
Hmm.
hope that we've illustrated to you guys that what we're involved in isn't just a speculative asset. When people hear digital currencies, they think of things like Pump.Fun or Pepe or Dogecoin or
Or
something like that.
chill guy.
Yeah, now Chill Guy, right? But um, what we're building is more along the lines of an actual market. And, we'll get more in detail about the soup to nuts for people who want to later on, like the automatic market making and how things are paired and how the assets actually work. But yeah, so we hope you join us for this ride and continue to evolve with us. But we thought it'd be fun today just to share with you guys how it is altogether possible to outperform the S&P 500 while having a lot of fun doing it.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that I really love about the car enthusiast world is the community. And that
Mm-hmm.
is a big component of what makes Web3 a fun place to be. Is, it's very community oriented. And now we're bringing together these two types of community. It can be an online global community, but also car community. And, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do things. The term is money can't buy experiences. That's something that we've only slightly touched on in this episode. But yeah, I mean, all these vehicles that we're going to be offering are going to come with them many money can't buy opportunities to, go to events and, join us on a trip to Japan to go um, to like Fuji Speedway or something like that, right? Uh, there's a lot of a lot more than just the dollars and cents behind it.
And I would even argue that as we move forward into the next decade, communities themselves are becoming a commodity,
Hmm.
right? Enough people together believing in one thing has the power to change anything. And that's really what makes what I call a meme coin popular. Enough people believe that SPX 6900 can flip the S&P 500 with conviction and hold. That itself is powerful and creates a micro economy within itself. And there's some influencers in the crypto space who are preaching about community and cult like communities, and the original cult-like community is the auto enthusiasts. So if we can pull that energy together and give people the opportunity, I think that's going to be a really powerful factor for people to realize that we can all turn our passion and our love and something that we've been apart from forever into an actual tangible revenue stream. Like I can't tell you how many times I've woken up early to go to a Cars and Coffee just to hang out with people and talk about their cars and show what I did to my car. I can't tell you how many times, the hours I put into different things and the different challenges that have come up within just being in this community. We've all experienced that. And so we're just trying to help take that to the next level.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably a good place to close out the podcast. But before we do, just want to throw out there that in the spirit of IRL events and community, we are going to be at ETH Denver at the end of the month, and we are going to be throwing a launch party for our RWA Real World Asset Investment app at Josh's shop that you see behind him, where he's currently shooting from. So if you're interested and if you're going to be at ETH Denver, we would love to have you. We'd love to connect while we're out there and bring you over to the shop and show off the Ferrari that will be front and center.
Absolutely. And then shortly after that, we'll be out at Slush Motorsports Festival, where maybe you can get a chance to drive a hot lap in the Ferrari. But we'll continue on. We'll continue building. We look forward to seeing you guys in the real world events, seeing online, as we join our Discord, as we build our online communities. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. And before we go, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe, whether you're watching live on X or if you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast elsewhere. Yeah, please subscribe, give us a like, and comment with your feedback. We love to hear from you. So yeah, I think that'll do it.
Right on, Alex. Pleasure chatting with you as always. We'll see you later.
All right, man. Well, cheers. Thanks everybody who joined. We'll see you next week.